officially represent the Shade Tree Commission.
We've got your number through that, so.
Right,
Yeah, I was going to recommend, you're going to be out in October, right?
right. I'm going to be out of the country.
Maybe you could, Tom sitting in the back, if you give him some information and present it to the Shade Tree Commission, and we can follow up through that area also, through the Shade Tree.
What kind of information should I give them?
Just, you know, what you, this, I'll have
Okay.
this, and then if you have any other explanatory information you want to share between now and then.
Okay,
So that
okay. Well, I'm leaving this Saturday.
So there's not much more information.
Yeah, I probably won't have a whole lot of time other than to give you,
I'll let
Tom.
Dave know, and we can put it on the agenda for October meeting.
Okay, I need to email him anyway, just to remind him. I told him once already that I was going to be gone, but I'll remind him again, and
And I'm sure Tom knows more about it than I do, so. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Another Shade Tree.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Mr. Jones?
One thing is there's a HPC meeting this Wednesday here in City Council Chambers. That's it.
Okay. Mrs. Keller?
Not exactly a committee report, but just regarding the new park that we're building. Jackie and I had a visit from some officials from the Columbus Zoo that came for our advice on how to do a park in a wonderful way. It was really exciting. They said we helped them a lot. So it's going to be exciting to see the changes that they make at the zoo and see if they took any of our suggestions and applied those.
That's wonderful. Mr. DeGenova?
Update on the Veterans Memorial. Last council meeting, I was excited we were going to do it on Veterans Day, but it's been postponed until Memorial Day of 2016 because of construction and I guess materials and thing. They're about 6-8 weeks behind. So it will be done in December, but the incoming weather and everything, we want to have it outside. We're going to more or less shoot for Memorial Day in May, so that we can have the flowers and everything. I do have posters I presented to the dinner the other evening on at the fairgrounds. I got a very good reception there as far as the veterans are all really interested in all the organizations, the VFW, American Legions and everything. So Jackie has those if anybody wants to see them.
Mr. Brush?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Shaker?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Helena?
Nothing.
Okay. Item 8 is the third reading of resolution 15-45. Clerk will please read this into the record.
Resolution number 15-45, a resolution adopting the 2016 through 2020 5-year capital improvement program.
No, it's the same. You remember that we have a meeting October 5th at 6 o'clock to go over this? So unless anybody has anything they want to discuss tonight, we'll just keep moving. Hearing none. We can't do 7:30 yet, can we? Okay, can we do number 12? Clerk will please consideration of ordinance 15-100.
Ordinance number 15-100. An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into an agreement with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, OCDETF program to receive reimbursement for overtime incurred when assisting in OCDETF investigations, strategic initiatives, and prosecutions and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. That this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to enable the city to enter into the agreement in a timely manner to ensure that the city will receive reimbursement for overtime costs and to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is an agreement authorizing the city manager to sign, the ordinances to allow the city manager to sign the agreement with OCDETF, the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. that specifically allows our drug task force representatives to be reimbursed for their overtime when they're working on OCDF cases. We've had this agreement with them previously in the past year, but it is expiring and will be renewed. It's a new agreement as of October 1st.
How much overtime did we use last year?
I don't have a number. It really is variable depending on whether we work on any federal cases. It has to be a federal case, which, I sign the reimbursement slips seems like every couple of weeks I'm getting one. So it's a pretty good number.
So it's a good program that's ongoing.
Yes, I mean, we're really going to work these cases anyways with the drug trade. It's so interconnected to, outside of Delaware to Columbus and state, local, and then to federal investigations that if we get involved in the federal investigation along the way and it's involved with OCDF, we can get the reimbursement for the overtime fees.
Any reason this should go to another reading or get a cutoff date or anything?
It has to be signed and turned in by October 1st. And we had our detective sergeant was overseeing this and he's been on extended sick leave. So it kind of caught up to us without us realizing it.
Any questions for Bruce?
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings of ordinance 15-100.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova? Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
I move to enact the emergency clause.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
I move to enact ordinance 15-100.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Motion carries. And we move on to item 13, consideration of ordinance 15-101.
Ordinance number 15-101, an ordinance supplementing the 2015 appropriations ordinance to provide funding in order to provide 2 properties on Central Avenue and declaring an emergency. The emergency clause of this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason to expedite the demolition of the properties due to their poor condition, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Mr. Eflin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this action, I know we've talked about these 2 properties before, and it's your direction was to move forward with the actions that we're bringing forward this evening, obviously, with respect to budget, to be able to do the acquisition of 258 Central, 273 Central, and then also to affect their demolition. And Jerry Warner's here tonight if you have any particular questions about some of the history and the orders, that sort of thing. But other than that, Bill Farino and Darren and myself, as well as the city manager, have prepared the supplemental. The supplemental includes approximately a little over 100,000 for acquisition, a little over 30,000 for demolition, and then a little bit of just extra in there in case we run into any asbestos that we have to abate. Our goal would be to be able to use our grant to cover the demolition asbestos abatement costs, not the acquisition. I think it's highly likely, we've done some work over the last several weeks, that these properties probably will fail several tests to be able to use the grant. Nevertheless, we're going to use our best efforts to be able to use those dollars, and then these simply could be reappropriated into the general fund at that time. Well, this allows us to move forward with acquisition and demolition. No, we can do that.
These houses are in pretty bad condition. What wouldn't pass before you get the grant?
There are many tests with respect to federal grants, as you're well aware. There are several, in this case, one of them being historic preservation review down at Columbus. It's not local. So that might precipitate the need to do separate assessments and historic surveys on the property, which frankly, I think would elongate the timeline and probably and increase the cost to be able to do this, and may just effectively render using the grant moot for that purpose. And then, and I think they're both going to be potentially qualifying. We'll see. We're going to make our best case, as I say. And then there are several particular items that we have to do with respect to CDBG and blight demolition removal. It's not just with these properties, it's with the other ones on our list as well. One of the hardest tests, I think, for them to meet is a $10,000 threshold for the improvements themselves. Below 10,000 is what we're looking for. We're going to have to work with the county auditor. In many of these cases, properties haven't been reassessed, haven't been reappraised. Obviously, we're looking to pay over that for these properties, and the property is the land and the improvements on it, but we would work with the county auditor to see if an appraisal could come back at $10,000 or less. Again, you can do it if it's 10,000 or more, but you're probably into creating additional low moderate income housing units elsewhere in the city, in addition to demolishing these, again, increasing costs, and having to create those housing units somewhere that we don't have funds for at this point in time. So those are a couple of the big hurdles.
Yeah, most lots in town are more than $10,000 period. If there's anything on them or not.
Yeah, and the land value is one thing. That's okay. It's the improvement value. Our case would be, for the ones that we're trying to use a grant for, we've obviously issued condemnation orders, or they're otherwise in other serious states of disrepair. So our argument is that they're probably worth minus whatever the demolition cost is in actuality, but they have to appraise it. That's a different process.
Any questions, Mr. Eflin?
What's the time element?
Now, there's a time element as well with respect to the grant, and we have to conduct separate individual environmental reviews on each property. We're hoping to be able to do programmatic environmental review, and we're not going to be able to do that. And so I can't give you an exact time element on the demolition. I can tell you, though, that there's been active negotiation and I'll say agreement in principle on the price for the acquisition of these properties. And so at this point, I guess staff is feeling like at your direction, we'd like to move while the iron's hot to at least be able to acquire the properties.
Mr. Warner, do you have anything to add?
No, it's just like Mr. Evans said, we have,
Can you come to the microphone? I'm sorry.
Well, now you did it. You spoke. You got to come up.
I'm sorry.
This summer.
no, like Mr. Eflin said, we've got these two homes here. I've got 7 others that need to come down within the city. So we've got $100,000 in time we go through it, do the asbestos abatement, and then trying to get the appraisals at the 10,000. I gave a list to the auditor for 8 to reevaluate, to try to get the appraisals at 10,000 or less. Because the people, when they drive by and look at them, they don't look so bad, but they don't realize there's no first floor in the home, there's no basement walls on the back of the house. We kind of told them what was going on with each one of these homes. And with these homes, we had the opportunity. It was just something that we were working with code enforcement, but it was also a way for us to improve the intersection, but still help the people that own the home, because this gives them money then in return that's much needed by both of them. So I think it's a good thing for the city as a whole to be able to get these down, even if we have to pay for the demolition costs, but not even out of the grant, because we've got the other houses that got to come down that are bad too. So either way, it's all got to be done. It's just a matter of time and where the funds are coming from.
These are properties, by the way, that Jerry has spent a lot of time and effort on, and just because you're here tonight and we never get to appreciate your effort on these properties over a series of years.
These have been.
Yeah.
Yep.
We know that. Any questions for Mr. Warner? Okay.
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings of ordinance 15-101.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
I move to enact the emergency clause.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
I move to enact ordinance 15-101.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellier?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Motion carries. Thank you for all your efforts, Jerry. I know how hard you worked on this. The time is 7:27. I know, I think in finance, you got 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I only need one. In your package, you had the report through the end of August. I know there's a little discussion. I think Tom might have added it in with the information with that last supplemental. Had probably a few more this year than normal. It's not like it's a problem or anything like that, but with our recently adopted fund reserve policy of maintaining a 17% balance, we may be towards the tail end of the year in a situation where we might have to appropriate a little less than what we project next year in refunds to get it back up to that 17% level, but probably won't be a problem. But other than that, the budget's looking pretty good so far this year. I'd entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions? All right. Let's move back up to item 9. Excuse me, which is the 7:30 public hearing. Elaine, will please read this from the record?
9, 10, and 11 go together.
Okay, we'll do them all. I was getting there, I was coughing, okay?
I was trying to help you out.
Thank you. We're proud.
Ordinance number 15-94. An ordinance approving a rezoning from R3 One Family Residential District to B2 Central Business District with tax limitations for the Delaware County Board of Commissioners for a new county courthouse located at 110 North Sandusky Street, just south of the Hayes Building on approximately 1.99 acres. Ordinance number 15-95, an ordinance approving a combined preliminary and final development plan for the Delaware County Board of Commissioners for a new county courthouse located at 110 North Sandusky Street, just south of the Hayes Building on approximately 1.99 acres in Zone B2 Central Business District with text limitations. Ordinance number 15-96, an ordinance approving a street vacation for Marshall Court right-of-way and right-of-way along the southeastern portion of the site for the Delaware County Board of Commissioners' new county courthouse located at 110 North Sandusky Street, just south of the Hayes Building on approximately 1.99 acres in Zone B2, Central Business District with text limitations.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, sorry for technical glitch there, but we have the PowerPoint up. Now we have John Melvin from the county here representing the applicant, the architect Tom Potts and his team. We're all here meeting. This is a case awaited to rezone the new Delaware County Courthouse, also a combined development plan, and some housekeeping really from when Hayes went up in terms of the street vacation. So we'll just jump right into it. The zoning map, here's the reason why we need some of the property. You can see it's outlined in red for the new county courthouse. Some of the property is in B2, which is down because some of the property is actually zoned residential. The actions before you tonight will place it all under the same zoning as the current Hayes Administration Building B2 with text limitations that you see in your. I think it's probably easier to show you visually. And while I'm here, I just want to touch on some of the street vacations because I think it's a little bit easier to see here. You can see this white strip here was the old Marshall Court. It's what we call Paper Street. It's there on paper still, even though Marshall Court is a private road that's in existence in the real world today that serves the Hayes Building in their parking lot. You can see a little tail of an old alley here, as well as an old alley in this location, and that's the street vacation portion of your ordinances tonight. Just clean those up. materials. This is our normal process in the downtown with major new construction when we have it, is to allow HPC to go through that design review process. And then for the development plan review process, which is another ordinance before you tonight, to really be about the site and access and all the other components, but allow HPC deference for the design. So that certificate of appropriateness has been issued. In your packet are these elevations. I'm confident you've seen these before, but for the good of the order, I'll show them to you as well here in just fairly quick succession. I think it's going to be a very handsome building. I think the combination of the county's efforts, the architect's efforts, the city's efforts, HPC, and the neighborhood, which was involved in these conversations, resulted in, here the primary Sandusky Street elevation that we're all going to be very excited to have, and will be a prominent traditional building on our on the top of the hill, really, is what it amounts to for a new courthouse. So let's look at the site plan really quickly. As you know, this is the Elks building and the old Leffler house, and we're on these sites. The garage is still there. The Elks building is there. I think they're moving to perhaps do demolition of the Elks building yet this year, while we have some time left with good weather and such, we hope. What you see here is the proposed county courthouse in the green outline. There are 5 levels depending on which side you look at this. From the 23 side, you'll see 5 levels, or there are 5 levels. From the Sandusky side, there are really 3 levels. 2 of these levels are underground parking decks. And so the blue is a portion of the parking deck that you'll see from Sandusky Street. And then there are 2 levels below that, but they actually go under the building as well. The parking lot along Union Street will be redeveloped. There will be entrances to the parking garages off of that lot, off of the adjacent alley, and off of Sandusky Street. Each level does not connect, and you get to them by those streets that I just mentioned. One item I want to bring up with respect to that is that I think it was Parking and Safety took up the issue a little bit of the alley and access off of the alley for the second level of the parking deck. And these are all controlled access for employees and for prisoner drop off and other control jurors and even judges. So they're all controlled access points by the county at the end of the day. They're not public parking lots. So that's much different for this land use than what we normally deal with, and gives them more control over this. But for that alley access, one of the questions that came up is that other people use that alley. And so at various points in that alley. And so we want to make sure that we reached out to those property owners who utilize that alley primarily and get their input going into the Planning Commission hearing for these cases, which we did. And what we heard back was that the law firm, who has some parking along this area right here, which is private parking that comes off the alley. The alley's 2-way today. The law firm title agency would respectfully like to keep the entrance and exit 2-way approach down, at least at this part of the alley. The county had previously proposed a 1-way alley to the east. And I think a combination of the county and that property owner just discussing the matter, it was really resolved between those two that we'll either keep it 2-way for the balance of the alley, or we won't disturb the access to that parking lot at any rate at that end of the alley. It'd be possible to keep 2-way at that end of the alley and make the rest of it 1-way, but I think we're at an amicable solution for that. We would need to come back to parking and safety, but I promised everybody I would report it tonight that way, and so I just did that. The other thing that the county is asking to do that would come back before parking and safety is for part of courthouse, really defense in the modern era, unfortunately, to step back from, it's needed to step back from the street, create a little bit of defensible zone, so you can't pull a car or truck or something right up next to the building. And so this area in yellow on the left side of the diagram envisions a bump out into about 7 public parking spaces on Sandusky Street now for defensible space. The idea would be that we would make this look in a very high quality fashion, much like the streetscape, perhaps even moving those streetscape elements out there, probably with some bollards and other sort of security adaptations like that. Again, we didn't receive any comment other than positive or neutral on that at Planning Commission. And that's something that would have to, that's different for us. I don't recall another request like that, at least in downtown. So I think on the face of it, we certainly are recommending approval of that, but that has to go to the Parking and Safety Committee to iron out the details of that as well. It doesn't necessarily affect the building of the building right here. But part of this is not a greenfield site where you can just move the building around the site and find an extra 40 feet here or there. This building occupies almost all of this site together with the garage and the parking lot. And so you can't just move these boxes around and find that defensible space is the bottom line. Now the building is about 92,000 square feet with the garages as well. Want to note that for you. There are several trees existing on this site, which are mature trees, fairly big under our code. The county's aware of this. We'll have to make an accounting of those trees. They do have to be removed, obviously, to develop this footprint that you see. The county is putting back in quite a number of trees on this site, some of which will be above and beyond the required number of street trees and that sort of thing. So we will do our normal accounting of trees under the tree preservation ordinance as well. A traffic impact study is still being discussed and undergoing with engineering department, and will result potentially in some additional recommendations. That's not unusual for development plan review. With that, I will stop and take any questions you might have, but your planning commission does recommend unanimous approval 7-0 at their last meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Rewind for a second. So we'll lose 6 parking spaces?
I think it's about 7 potentially
7?
at the end of the day, yeah.
So they won't let us use their parking. You're building this monstrous parking lot that no one else could use. And then they're going to take away 6 or 7 spots off Sandusky Street?
Parking and safety was against that. That's what we're over here him-hawing about.
I'm not thrilled with this at all.
I think there was some discussion. I certainly let John address that.
Sorry, John.
But there was some discussion at Planning Commission, and John and the county were more than open to the idea of perhaps that top deck on Sandusky. They're open to looking at that as more open parking in after hours. We had talked about that with them. There's lots of stuff to talk about there, though, in terms of it's gated and you have to make sure people are out of there in the morning and the time that jurors and other people would come. But I think they're open to that discussion in terms of creating some additional parking spaces. That's part of your point there, too.
Well, if you're taking away 6 or 7, and yeah, you have to be sharing something else with us.
Oh, but the problem is the 6 or 7 they're taking are ones that people are going to need during the day when they can't park in their facility. So we're basically losing another 6 or 7 parking spots in a very busy area of town.
Right. Sorry, John. What you got to say? Can you give us your name and address for the record first?
John Melvin, Manager Facilities for the Delaware County Board of Commissioners, 101 North Sandusky Street. Obviously, this is a courthouse, and court security is high priority. It's high profile, too. So, yes, we recognize there is a parking issue. Excuse me. Daytime parking, this building will be accessed by the public from the Union Street side, so all the public parking will be in the Union Street parking lots. We, by creating these parking decks and moving the employees, it's going to open up all those parking spots in the parking lots for the public. So, when this building opens, the employees of that building, there'll be more parking spaces underneath the building than in the building. So we anticipate being able to use Hayes Building employees to be able to utilize that parking as well, opening up more spots in the parking lots there. So, you know, the biggest issue is court security. We're open. We look at the idea of, you know, making that Sandusky Street parking lot available. But again, I mean, this is a courthouse. And then it's unfortunate in this modern age, we have to be worried about that.
Is there any is there any thought, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but could we expect to potentially see something come forward in the future, trying to do some type of additional safety zone farther north there in front of the Hayes Building?
I don't anticipate it. Okay. I mean, The master plan, this is just part of the master plan that county developed and it was finalized in 14. The next stage of the master plan, once this courts building is completed, is to renovate the existing courthouse onto it and move juvenile and probate court out of Hayes building into that facility. Open the Hayes building back up more for public access for the auditor, treasurer.
And there's no,
Move the
so
court.
since it's not a judicial building, the
Yeah,
expectation is there doesn't have to be that level of
Right.
security.
Right. Move the judicial functions out of the Hayes building.
Okay, so I'm just not understanding how restricting parking on Sandusky keeps that building any safer. What is to prevent someone from pulling into the parking garage?
It's secured parking of its employees only.
So where will the people park that are coming for court hearing?
All in the parking lot there off the Union Street. All along the Union Street. The public entrance will be down there in the yellow shaded area off that. It will be the public entrance into the building.
If it helps, Councilwoman, the new parking decks create about 170 new parking spaces. Yes, there'll be new employees in this building, but that's more than they need. So what John is describing is that in addition to prisoner drop-off and jurors and those sorts of things, that they'll be able to utilize, a lot of the employees now park in here and even in this lot will be able to be moved in here, freeing up public parking spaces here where you go by today and it's pretty much all parked up during the day.
Are these spots being removed? Is this a design preference or is this a mandate?
It's a preference.
What we've heard from the architect too, and I think it's consistent, I would say it's consistent, is that that is typical architecture in defense of judicial buildings today, as we can see it today.
It's a standard, not a mandate.
So I'm curious then why the building wasn't built with a setback. If that was the preference of not being able to park that close and Sandusky Street is right there, then why wasn't the building adjusted for that?
Part of the preference too for HPC was to keep the buildings in line with the Hayes building. And utilize that lot to the most efficient.
The other issue is that you'd need about 40 feet. And I know this, you can lose sense of scale and stuff, but as a practical matter to maintain your drive aisles and that sort of thing without adjusting their plan, even if you just shove the whole building back 40 feet, you're changing the whole site plan. There's just not, it's slightly less than 2 acres we're building on here for 92,000 square feet.
So
Not
your hopes
that you
that,
couldn't adjust the design, but that would necessitate going back to HPC.
so this 170 parking lot, your hopes that some of them that park on Sandusky now will park in there?
Employees, yes.
Employees, yeah. That's what you see now, it's a lot of
Yeah,
employees.
you see a lot of employees parking on Sandusky Street going in the Hayes building. Again, yeah, the employees of the new judicial building won't use up the 170 spaces. So I think it'd be less than 100. So we'll be able to, not all the Hayes employees will be able to park in the parking structure, but a good number of them will. So we'll, maximize the use of that parking for employees and get them out of the lot.
So right now, the Hayes building, that parking lot is full
Yes.
every day, and they overflow into the one on the opposite side of Union.
Yes,
So are you saying some of those will also park in this?
yes.
Now, Dave, did I hear you correctly that that's not part of this legislation, that would be a separate piece of legislation at a future date?
It's on the site plan, but the process is that will have to go back through Parking and Safety Committee. Our position is that, much like the alley, the site plan works today with the alley being one-way, two-way, or whatever way. And Sandusky Street, again, because it's a standard, the site plan still works as it is today. Those are more details of the site plan, which is probably more.
So if
better dealt with
it's left in the
the
site
same.
plan, then it would still have to go to parking and safety and then ultimately come back to council for a vote, at least as part of the some future consent agenda.
Correct, and if that was eliminated through that process or otherwise changed and the site plan had to adjust just a bit, I don't think that's a problem. Staff will handle it that way, so we wouldn't have to be going back through this process again.
So not necessarily a question that needs to be answered definitively prior to approving
Right.
these plans tonight.
But I would suggest that parking and safety is gonna wanna know some numbers as far as what kind of spots are gonna be freed up and that type of thing.
Yes.
I'm not procedurally understanding how we're gonna come back to this because this is a combined preliminary and final.
Because to actually eliminate the public parking spaces, that has to go through parking and safety and then come to council. And so if council did not approve that, then this plan would have to be amended by staff.
Okay,
Or it may be that if that parking safety eliminates the Sandusky Street bump out, that the county has to make a decision. Do we move forward without that bump out, or do we come back through and amend this plan through planning commission and council to, and maybe HPC at that point? It was a bit of a chicken and egg. Who goes first? The site plan obviously has a lot more parts to it than just these 2 items of detail. And so that's the way we decided with the applicant to proceed.
So these bump outs will be similar to the ones on Winter Street. That's what you're thinking?
That's what I'd envision, near Buns. And maybe even an opportunity to put a crosswalk. There's still quite a bit of traffic between the Hayes Building and the courthouse.
I could see bringing the street trees out a little farther to just an idea. And that way you create really more of a wider sidewalk between there and the new facility, but you kind of extend the streetscape a little bit.
Okay.
how often do courthouses get bombed? With a car that's parked?
Well, unfortunately, in Oklahoma.
We went through a similar scenario with the National Guard in doing the memorial out there too. But they wanted us to put a barrier there. They agreed that, we don't want anybody driving up into that memorial.
I mean, that security provision is standard out of the courthouse, but police stations and other such facilities. Vehicles and explosives can't get close to these things.
I mean, it is a standard, and it is something you have to weigh the risks and the cost. I mean, the cost of 7 parking spots. It's you got to find the balance. But I mean, what the architect presents is what would be standard. It's not a mandate, but in his presentation, that's what was recommended. If that's 7 spaces is too high of a cost.
And then John, before you go to parking and safety, you'll have an idea whether they're going to allow us to use that upper floor for shared parking after hours. It'll help them make a decision.
I'll try. I mean, it also goes back to the judicial, the judges and everything, and the court security. So I can't promise that, but
See what you can do for us. Thank you.
Are they gonna have any bulletproof windows in it?
I don't know about bulletproof. That's,
Because I went through that when I built the Justice Center, that they were afraid somebody on 23 was gonna come by and shoot one of the judges.
Okay, any other questions for John or Dave? If not, we'll open this up to the public. Anyone from the public would like to come forward at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And what is the wish on council?
Well, I guess for my part, I'm comfortable moving this legislation tonight. This has been a long time coming, and I don't want to hold up the county any longer than is necessary, especially because at some point they're going to have to, get this bonded, and they're going to be dealing with a potential interest rate hike later this year. So I think that if we can help facilitate this moving along, we should go ahead and do it. I do think that this parking situation has to be resolved, but I think that there are some options going forward that we don't necessarily need to get that ironed out before approving this.
I agree.
So with that, I'll move to suspend rules requiring 3 readings of ordinance 15-94.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mr. DeGenova. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move to enact ordinance 15-94.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries.
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings of ordinance 15-95.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move to enact ordinance 15-95.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Motion carries.
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings of ordinance 15-96.
Second?
Should we open that up for a public hearing since it's separately?
Sure.
Is anyone here, we'll open this up for a public hearing on ordinance 15-96. And we'll close the public hearing. Okay, go ahead. Thanks, Andy.
Sure.
So,
Is there a second?
Yes.
okay, motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move to enact ordinance 15-96.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Brush, second by Mr. DeGenova. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Melvin, if you would please pass on our gratitude to the county commissioners and to the design team. I think the fact that there was nobody here for tonight's public hearing is a good indicator that the people who live in the neighborhood and who live in the city are pleased with the plans, and that the concerns were worked out in HBC and in Planning Commission. And I think it's a good proposal, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
concur that the design team has done a wonderful job working with the neighborhood and HBC. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, item 15 is city manager's report. Just assistant city managers. How's that?
Yeah, how about that? I
like
like that. I just have 2 things. Tomorrow, we will be meeting with a group of people from the city of Reynoldsburg. They are interested in touring our community center and sitting down and discussing with us how we were so successful over 14 quick years to pass a levy that would build the community center, plus update our fields. And they also want to talk to us about the recreation management agreement that is in place now between the city and the YMCA. So we're doing that tomorrow afternoon. The cicada planning is going nicely. Michelle is really spearheading a lot of the internal work on that. We met with Jennifer Nicely from Dempsey today, and she is the person that's in charge of the student visit. And so she was able to give us a lot of insight into what we can expect. However, unfortunately, for the last 2.5 weeks, we've had radio silence from cicada. And so we've reached out to some people at Wesleyan to see if they could reach our contacts in cicada and ask them, beg them to please return our emails so that we can continue planning. So as we update that, I will make sure that you're all copied on that. And Tom will be back in town late Sunday night, and I'm available until then if anybody needs anything.
Didn't the email go out that you're going to do some before one of the council meetings from 6 to 7? You're going to have
Yes.
some instructions.
Thank you.
Their culture.
I believe it's the October 12th meeting from 6 to 7. June Kawabi from Ohio Wesleyan has offered her time to come and talk to us and teach us about some cultural differences that we have that we can expect to see when our visitors are here from Cicada. plus teach us some conversational Japanese so that we could have some very basic conversations with our visitors. We are also going to look at having interpreters on hand, and we just want to avoid an international incident as best we can. So that's it.
Good idea. Okay, council comments. Mr. Jones?
I have none there.
Mrs. Keller?
I wanted to take a moment to talk about the wellness program.
Okay.
I think that this is a wonderful initiative that we have started, and I would encourage my colleagues to lead by example and participate in this program. Basically what you do, we all received an email, you log in, you create an account, you answer some general fitness and wellness questions. You sign up for a biometric screening, which will give you information about your blood work, your cholesterol, blood pressure, help you, Jackie. BMI, just things like that. If you participate in this program, you can get a Fitbit, which is cool because mine just broke. And I think that discounted rates for health insurance should be our long-term targeted goal. But I think this is a really great start. And I really think that council members should just participate so that we can kind of lead the charge so that we have a healthier workforce. And I think that that is a wonderful thing. So thank you so much, Jackie, for spearheading.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. DeGenova?
I have nothing.
Mr. Rush?
Two quick questions. The first, are there going to be any elected officials from Reynoldsburg at that meeting tomorrow, Jackie?
I do not have the final list, but you know what I can do is I can email my contact tonight and I can let you know.
Okay.
Would you like
Great.
to? I'll let all of council know.
Thank you. I guess that's it, actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Schaefer?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Helmut?
Nothing.
I had a couple of questions. The concrete water trough that they want to move in front of Wesleyan, my understanding of the Historical Society wants it. Why aren't we just moving it back and leaving it where it should be? I mean, isn't that where it started in history? Why are we suddenly moving this? Right now, I mean, have any answers?
I can fill in some blanks probably.
Thank you.
Just based on the conversation I had with a resident who apparently his great-grandfather's name is on that trough, and he approached me at the Westland game about not moving that, but I guess it stems from the university not wanting it there. So got around it, they're not happy, with all the cleanup they've done in the area with the new building. That they wanted it moved, so the Historical Society said they would take it and move it out to their location. That's how it started. Something went on. I think Lee, posted something on Facebook, and I think started a bunch of dialogue in the community, and which got that gentleman upset, and some other people upset that it's a historical part of the city. It should stay in the city, at least move it across the street or move it back. It shouldn't necessarily be moved away from the downtown. I don't know if I filled in any blank, but that's the best of the situations I know.
Do you have any room at the cemetery we could put it? Whether it be inside or outside the fence? I mean,
So it's not in the way, but it's in the right of way currently, right?
It's in the treatment.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not in the way of anything per se. It's
No,
just
it gets hit
aesthetic
by the
concern.
snow plows.
I
Yeah.
know that.
But, my suggestion, I talked to Tom about it, is, put a historical marker on it, some history of what it is, and move it back or something. I don't necessarily think it should be moved from downtown. Everyone, a lot of people are talking about, the historical marker for the president's house, and, that we have no sense of history. We keep doing stuff.
Right, I don't want to make another mistake like we
Exactly.
did when they tore that down.
So that's what I know about it.
I like it. Okay, thank you.
I think from the city perspective, I think Brent Carson may be the person to contact. I think he just offered his services to, we'll take it. But I think the university is the ones who spawned get it out of here type.
All right, I'll follow up and fill everybody in on the email by the end of the week, if that's all right.
Since we're talking about historical markers, that reminds me of something. There used to be a marker down near Mingo. It was at Sandusky and Lincoln for Pluggy's Town.
It sure did.
And it was stolen maybe 5 years ago, presumably for scrap or something along those lines. If we have the text of that somewhere, I wonder if we could get that replaced.
Sure.
I'm sure we have it. I'm sure Mr. Yocum has it somewhere.
Great.
In his bag.
And then I don't see Sean here tonight. Did we get the flag issue worked out with the barber shop? Because I'm sick of seeing it on Facebook. North Sandusky, the barber shop that wanted the flag, and then it was the tree's fault because we couldn't see the sign. Have we got anywhere with that one? It was the flutter banner.
I can tell you where we are in the
Okay.
code enforcement process. We did our enforcement, as you know, and then we also returned and presented the owner with some information about how she might be able to go about doing some temporary signage in accordance with our code as well. And I believe we brought Fran Hamilton into that conversation, and we do that from time to time to just help facilitate the conversation a little bit. We provided her the code. She was going to follow up with her as well. But there were a number of options that it seemed like it occurred to us that if it's temporary signage that she's after, that there were some ways that she might be able to do that without doing a flutter flag or attaching something to the railing and that sort of
Yeah, I saw the thing she attached to the railing. I knew that wasn't a flag. What, that must have an A-frame, like everybody else has up
We
there.
went over that with her as well. We think there's adequate room to be able to do that. You gotta technically do those up near the building or out in the kind of the brick area, and there's room in the brick area to still leave a sidewalk open, even with the ramp and the steps that are right there. So she was just more quiet than anything, but I think, hopefully Fran can help facilitate
Some of the
those.
emails also said there was the trees. That was the reason she needed signs, because you couldn't see her side in our building because the trees were so full.
It's the first time I've heard the tree.
That was I took care of that. And
Okay.
Doug Richmond was going to go up there. I'm sure it was done with the Fair Week. I'm not sure if it got done,
Right,
but
okay.
he's going to follow up with that. And then I'm going to ask Sean to follow up with an email to all of council to give you a status update, because he did want to go up and work with her on some marketing ideas that he had.
Okay. All right, I guess that's it then. And so, we're adjourned at 8:04? For me.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. I just did it, we're done.